A very warm welcome to today's edition of our learning tutorial. I'm JK of JK Clothing. Today we're going to learn how to draft, cut and sew this beautiful Victorian corset you see right here. A Victorian corset with a keyhole neckline, also has a band collar, very beautiful. A little exaggerated sleeve and that panel skirt you see right there. This is what we're going to do today. If you want to learn how to do this, stick and stay. Let's do this together. Yeah, so we're going to deal with our skirt. What we are doing is that we would first take cognizance of our measurement. We have the full skirt length being 41, the waist being 32 and a half, and then the hip being 40. But then, in the name of this skirt, and because we want to snatch the waist of the skirt so much, we are going to do 30 instead of the 32, and then we'll continue with the rest. Okay, so we are starting with a mermaid skirt, which has 6 panels. And so this is how we go about it. We draw this to represent our starting line. Our full skirt length is 41 inches. We assume that we would finish the edge with about half of an inch. And then we'll do same for the hem line. That is just about half of an inch as well. And so we are doing a total of 42 inches. From the waist to the hip, that is 8 inches. That is considering the difference between the shoulder to the waist and shoulder to the hip. The difference is 8 inches. We add the half-inch allowance for the waist finishing to it, and then we have 8.5. From the hip line, we go down by 10 inches. With this done, we have the waist, the hip, and then the knee. But this is not exactly the knee. This is the upper part of the knee. And this is where we want to break the tightness and make it loose, going down further. And so on the waistline, we divide our waist into 4, and then we add our seam allowance. The waist is 32 and a half. But as we said earlier, we are making it 30 because we want it to be a bit tight. And so this is 30 plus our seam allowance. We'll come to the hip side. The hip is 40 divided by 4 gives us 10 plus our seam allowance. When we come to the knee, the upper knee as I've indicated, the measurement would be the hip measurement divided by 4 minus 1.5. Then we add our seam allowance. We are going to connect the plot from the waist to the hip and to the upper knee using a French curve or a freehand. What we do is that we'll take this same measurement we had here at the upper knee. We now have a total of 10.5. We'll take the same measurement to where the full length is. To make it flary, we'll add 6 inches to it. And then we'll connect the line from that point to join the upper knee. After that, we would move upwards from this very point by 1 inch. And then in a curve, connect it to this line we see at the base here. And so you can leave this skirt at this if you don't want the fullness at the down part to be so much. But then if you want to increase it, you'd go ahead to do what you're about to do. What you're about to do would be to divide the knee, the upper knee line into two to find the center. We will do same for the waist, and you can do same for the hip. That is if you want to get a curve, depending on how you want it to appear. And so as I said, depending on the style or the design you want to give the front hip area, you can either do this straight line from the waist to the upper knee, or you can do a curve. That is using the hip divided by 2. This very hip measurement we see here divided by 2 to get a midpoint, so that it gives this curve. And so this is just a design. Any of them you want to use, you can go ahead and use it. That's not what is most important to us right now. We want to be able to also add more fullness to the down part. And so what you're going to do is that we'll use the same measurement we got here, which is 4 1/4. That is from the center front all the way here, being 4 1/4. We take the same measurement to the hemline. And then we add 4 inches to it towards the hip, just as we did for the other part here. We are not done yet. We would also move from this same point we had here, also 6 inches towards the center front or the center back area, because this pattern we are drafting is for both the front and the back of the skirt. If we are to move 6 inches towards this area, it will exceed our brown paper. So we need to add more brown paper at this area before we do it. Quite unfortunately, the video paused along the line, and then all that was being said wasn't recorded. So I got to this point. And so you'd pardon me so that I explain in continuation. What happens is that after we have marked our 6 inches this way and then ruled a line, we would come to the same portion, which is the distance between these two markings. We'll bring the same thing here, and then we mark 6 inches towards the center front or the center back, as the case may be, and then we draw a line to connect it from the upper knee area all the way to that 6 inches that we had done. And for that to be possible, we had to attach an extra brown paper in front here, since it was going to exceed the center front or the center back, as the case may be. And so after I've done that, what you do next would be to connect this line to that line. Because we'll be cutting this panel as one and this front panel as another, it means that if we are to cut this front panel, the side panel will get short by this draft we see here. Because of that, we had to place another brown paper under the whole thing. We pin it, and then we shape the part that will be cut off. And so we use our tracing wheel, and then we mark this line all the way to this point. And then we traced it further till we got to this line, this point. After we are done with that, we can cut out the panels. And so we cut out our front panel. We cut in this shape all the way to the center front here to the top. And we can remove this. This is what we traced we traced from this point all the way to this part as we see the markings here. And so we'll tape this. So this would be our side panel, and then we are also going to cut this off. Okay, so now this is the front panel or the back panel, and this is the side. And so where these two are overlapping, when we sew them together, we are going to get it this way. And so it would make the down part much fuller than it was before. And so we're going to get this. The next thing I did when the video had paused was this shape, because we want to give the kente a V shape at the top before we add the fullness, which you use the contrast fabric for. This is what we did. It didn't really follow any particular shape. It depends on how you want your curve to be. You can make it shallow, you can make it deep. We wanted to make it shallow initially. That's why we did this. And so it doesn't really have any measurement. Ideally, it doesn't have any measurement. But then what I made sure I did was that where the fullness begins, that is from the knee going downwards, I made sure that whatever line I drew met that point, so that if we are to cut the top for the kente, this other part would be full of the contrast fabric, that is the brocade. We would use that for this part, and that is how come I drew this shape here, which went this way. Yes, and so we are done with this. We are going to use this to cut our fabric. But just as I said, because I want the design of the kente not to be truncated, and so I wouldn't cut these two as I've done this here. I'm going to put them together like this. I'll cut this off, and then I'll cut a full piece of this with a kente. And so we're going to mark them. This would be the center front stroke center back, depending on what we are using it for, whether you're using it for the front panel or the back panel. And this is the same. This is the side. And let me do this arrow to indicate which part would be joining which part. And so it means we are joining this to that. Now we can go ahead and then cut our top piece, and then we deal with this too. And so we're using this for our kente, front and back. And then this would be for the brocade, contrast fabric. For the down part of the skirt, before we will be joining these two parts together, it means we need to add our seam allowances. Also, because we'll be adding this, also we'll be joining these two to the top part of the skirt. We would as well have to add our seam allowance to the tops too. And so we are adding our seam allowance to both the top and where the joining would be. Same will we do for this other panel. We'll add our seam allowance to the top and then to where these two would join. But to save our fabric, I want to flip this one this way. Remember, you can't do same for all fabrics, because there are some fabrics where you turn the direction and then the color of the fabric may change. Yes, and so it's not for all fabrics that you can do this, but to save fabric, if the motifs in the fabric are not that may get distorted when you turn it upside down, you can do this and then you'd save a lot. And so we've cut 4 pieces of this, meaning 2 on fold, 2 on another fold. And so we have 4 pieces of this. That is the sides. And then we have 2 of this. We have 1 for the center front, and then we have 1 for the back. But then the back too, because of the zip at the back, I've left some seam allowance so that you'll be joining the back. Though the zip will not get to this portion. It is to make joining the top part of the back pattern a bit easier for us. And so that's how come we've added our seam allowance to it. Right. With this, we are supposed to join them. And so we'll go ahead and then join the pieces together. Before we stitch all the parts together, we also would have to get our lining ready. How do we do this? Because we wanted the shape. That is the reason why we did this demarcation, and then we cut the top off and detached it from the down part. But with the lining, we can still do it as we would have done it the usual way. And so what you're going to do right now would be to still cut the part where we taped together. We'll cut it, and then we'll join this top to the down part, and then we join this part to the other side as well, the side panel as well. When we are done doing that, we'll use those to go and then cut our lining. We will be making it 4 inches shorter than what we did for the self. So this is our front pattern, and this is our back pattern. And we have as well cut another for the back pattern. This is our front, and this is our side. This is the center back. And so we have our zip allowance also slitted here. Yeah, so we are done with joining the lining. This is the back, and then the other ones are also ready. When it comes to the self, this is the front pattern. We've joined the middle together to get this design. And this is the front panel. That is the front down part. These are the sides. So this one comes here, and this other one goes to the other direction. It comes here. So we are to join the down panels together. We join this to that, and then we join this to that. We'll go and stitch them. After joining them, we'll do the same for the back, where we join the center back panel to the side panels as well. But then that one was slitted, and so it has 2 pieces. It has 2 pieces of the center back instead of this one having 1 piece. So we'll go and join the other panels, the side and side panels, to the back panel too. After joining these pieces together, what we're going to do is to insert the down part onto the upper part. And so we'd match the center front of the upper part to the center front of the down part. So this is what we are doing. We are making sure that the midpoint meets with the midpoint here. And after this, we'll shift this down. So we do this. We'll do same for the other part, and then we'll go ahead to stitch. So after we are done fixing the down part to the top, we are going to put the lining on this, and then we'll stitch at the waistline. So this is it, good sides to good side at the waistline. So we're going to finish the waistline by stitching. With the front, we'll do the same thing by placing good sides together, and then we'll go ahead and stitch the waistline to get it finished. We'll finish our waistline. What you are going to do next would be to do a lock stitch, to finish the hem of the lining, and then we'll do the same thing for the self as well, the hem of the self as well. We'll do the same thing. When we are done with that, we'll stitch this. We'll also do a lock stitch to finish the unfinished edges, as we see here. We are going to do that for both the two back panels and the front as well. Now, we've gone to run overlock stitches all around so that the fabrics do not fray off. What you are doing now is to fix our zip at the center back. And so we'll match the fabrics together, making sure it meets. It's all because of the design we want at the back. We don't want to get it distorted. And so we are making sure that we match this design to that design. The zip allowance that was added was about 1.5 inches. And so we are taking that zip allowance off. And so our zip will extend from the waist all the way to about 10 inches towards the hip line. And so when we start sewing, we'll sew from here and then we leave it for the zip fixing. After we are done with this, we would fix our zipper here and then we'd open it and match our front pattern like this. And then we'll stitch our seam allowance. We are going ahead to shape the skirt. The waist is 30, 40 for the hip, and then we have also come inward by 1.5 inch from the hip to give it this shape. And that is the mermaid we see down here. And so we're going to stitch this and then we'll come back to fix our crinoline, or crinoline, or crinoline, any of them. So we have our skirt already done. And then we want to attach our crinoline to the base, that is the hemline. This is what you do. This being the beginning, we'll flip it over like this. And then we place it at any part of the hem. And then we start stitching. You make sure that you don't pull or push this crinoline. All you do is just allow the machine to draw it backwards. I'm using a contrast one so that it will be much visible. And so we are first doing top stitching. So after top stitching, we'll flip it inside like this. And then we start stitching all along the edge here. And so after this, we would go ahead and then iron it. And we are done with fixing our crinoline onto the hem of our skirt. So this is our beautiful paneled mermaid skirt. Thank you so much for watching till the end. Please don't forget to subscribe, share, comment, and recommend to friends and loved ones. Let us grow this page together. I definitely can't love you less. Bye.